This offseason, there has been quite a bit of shakeup, so if you're expecting the standings to look similar to how they ended up last year, you need to think again. On one hand, there have been quite a few teams addressing their weaknesses head on and actively improving by bringing in new talent to bolster those areas, but then on the other hand, there are teams doing the opposite, and that brings us to today's video. Today, we will be discussing the 5 NBA teams that are destined to fall off pretty hard next season, based on everything that has gone down this summer, ranging from their free agency moves, trades, injuries, and everything in between that could possibly result in a regression. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first team we'll be discussing today that is destined to fall off hard in the upcoming season is the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are probably the most obvious inclusion on today's list for a variety of reasons. For one, there was a strong likelihood of this being the case the second that Jason Tatum went down with his torn Achilles in the playoffs, because without him, their chances of competing at the highest level for a championship definitely took a big hit. Then, every move the team has made since then has basically solidified the fact that they're willing to tank this season in order to preserve long-term flexibility and better prepare themselves to bounce back in 2 years when Tatum returns to the court. The Celtics traded away Kristaps Porzingis for a return that landed them George Niang and a second-round pick, which is arguably as big of a downgrade as it gets at the power forward position. They also traded away Jrue Holiday to the Trailblazers in a deal that got them Anthony Simons, who may be an upgrade over Jrue as a scorer, but he's a huge negative on the defensive end, and the Celtics already have Derek White and Peyton Pritchard willing and able to embrace volume scoring roles in the backcourt, so Simons' skill set becomes fairly redundant while also actively hurting the Celtics' defensive output. Then, when you factor in Al Horford leaving in free agency, you find a team that lost 4 of their most important players with a completely different approach for the season. They'll likely be more willing to play some younger guys this year to get them some experience, which will come with growing pains. They're not going to be able to defend nearly as well with the players that they have now, and a starting lineup of Anthony Simons, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Sam Hauser, and Neemias Queta has play-in tournament at best written all over it. The next team destined to fall off pretty hard this upcoming season is the Phoenix Suns. You may not think the Suns have much room to fall after disappointingly missing the playoffs last season, but trust me, there's another level they're about to hit. The Suns tried and failed to put together a star-studded trio to lead them back to the NBA Finals, with Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal all being big names that have had massive seasons at their best. Unfortunately for Phoenix, the Big Three era has proven to be a thing of the past, and their complete and utter neglect of rotational depth happened right when the NBA started to trend more towards roster balance and depth as the way to the top. That trio didn't win a single playoff series together, and now both Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal are gone, which is probably for the best for the sake of their future, but in the present, it's looking pretty bleak. For starters, this team is overrun by shooting guards without a single true point guard on the entire team, which always proves to be problematic when it comes to winning games because natural playmakers need to be present to complement the natural scoring talents around them and make good decisions on the ball, and you can't force a score-first guy into a pass-first role. Devin Booker and Jalen Green will now be sharing lead ball handling duties, which limits both of them in terms of what they do best. Jalen Green has also been one of the worst decision makers on the ball in the entire league amongst the players that score over 20 points per game, and Devin Booker has shown he can handle point guard duties in spurts, but he's better when he can focus on getting to his spots and scoring the ball at will and doesn't have to worry about getting everyone else involved. Royce O'Neal, Dillon Brooks, and Mark Williams round out the rest of this team's starting lineup for the new year, lacking in much creation, and Mark Williams specifically hasn't been able to hold up over the course of a season at any point yet, so with a flawed lineup, missing important skill sets, and a lack of creativity outside of the backcourt, this is going to be a pretty frustrating season for the Phoenix faithful. The next team that is destined to fall off this season is the Indiana Pacers. I feel bad for Pacers fans because their team went from being one win away from cementing themselves into the history books as champions for life, to now having one of the bleakest outlooks in the near future, all within the span of a few days. Of course, this all started in Game 7 of the NBA Finals when Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles trying to play through injury and seal the deal for Indiana, and that injury now means he is going to miss the entirety of next season. Tyrese Halliburton is the engine that makes this team go, he's their leader on and off the court, he's their best player, and he's the heart of a lot of what made them so good last year. The entire offense runs through him. He's the one pushing the pace in transition. He's the one setting everybody else up for looks that they otherwise wouldn't be getting, and he's someone who ranks near the top of the league in assists every year, and down the stretch of close games, he's the one taking and making the big shots. As if losing him wasn't bad enough, Miles Turner then decided to betray the Pacers faithful by leaving in free agency to sign with the Milwaukee Bucks, who the Pacers had eliminated in the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. When you lose two of your three best players, the fact of the matter is your team is going to sink down the standings, especially when you don't really do anything notable to replace them. They did sign Jay Huff to help at center, who can reliably space the floor as a 7-footer, but he's about to be on his 5th team in 5 seasons and has only ever been a 7-point-per-game scorer that has played fewer than 15 minutes per game off the bench for teams, so expecting him to fill the void left by Miles Turner is just unrealistic. This will be a season used to give players like Benedict Mathurin and Andrew Nembhard experience playing bigger roles, and Pascal Siakam will still be doing a lot more heavy lifting, but there's just no world where they're going to scare anybody in the playoffs if they even make it. The next team set to fall off pretty hard this season is the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers may not have had any major losses like the other teams we've discussed so far, but the way their summer has gone may result in them simply being passed up by the competition. The Lakers finished as the 3 seed in the West last year, which sets a high bar for them to replicate in such a loaded Western Conference, and when you take a look closer, you see that there wasn't much separation between them and 3rd place and the Memphis Grizzlies, who were in 8th place, as they were only separated by 2 games record-wise. The Lakers' leaky defense became very blatant at the end of the season and in the playoffs, in large part because they lost their defensive anchor Anthony Davis in the trade that got them Luka Doncic, and while Luka is the perfect piece to build around for the future, the present sees this group easy to score on. Luka himself has never been a plus defender, LeBron James at 40 years old has way more mental lapses on defense than most are willing to admit, and the players they brought in to help haven't proven to be positive assets in a few years. They needed a center desperately, and ended up with DeAndre Ayton being their solution, which, I'm sorry, just isn't a very good solution. Ayton may put up nice numbers in the box score, but his defensive effort has been pretty terrible for a few years now, and last season on the Trailblazers, who were already a pretty bad team, they allowed 5 more points per 100 possessions on defense with Ayton on the court, so things went from bad to worse with him as their anchor. Marcus Smart is a former Defensive Player of the Year winner on the perimeter, but last 2 years have been disastrous for him as he's only been able to play 54 combined games in that span, and he looked like a shell of his former self when he was on the court, so him being the Lakers' big acquisition isn't really doing much either. The Lakers also lost Dorian Finney-Smith in free agency, who was one of the few players in their front court that helped on defense, and while they should still be in the mix fighting for a playoff spot, I don't see any way they finish with home court advantage in the first round like they got as the 3 seed last year. There's a better chance they find themselves in the play-in tournament range of the standings unless they get more active between now and the end of the summer. And finally, the last team we'll be discussing today that is destined to fall off this upcoming season is the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks are like the Lakers in that they're stuck in a position where they may just end up getting passed up in the Eastern Conference by other teams around them who were more aggressive this summer in strengthening their rosters. The Bucks were on the other end, seeming to desperately cling to a roster that had already disappointed immensely 2 years in a row, and now they're going to be without Damian Lillard at point guard. Lillard was yet another unfortunate player that tore his Achilles in the playoffs, so the Bucks decided to buy him out of his contract completely, now paying him a lot of money for the foreseeable future to play elsewhere, which clogs up a chunk of their payroll. Losing Lillard is a big blow that cannot go understated, because now their starting backcourt is in the hands of Kevin Porter Jr. and Gary Trent Jr., who don't provide nearly the same level of creation, while also being pretty noticeable negatives on the defensive end. Then you factor in the downgrade shooting-wise this lineup has, when you see Kyle Kuzma is one of the league's worst volume shooters from deep, making just 30% of his threes, Kevin Porter Jr. shoots just 31% from three, and Giannis Antetokounmpo is still not threatening anyone out there, making just 22% of his threes. Miles Turner is definitely an upgrade over Brook Lopez at center, but the best case scenario is that this group treads water, and a more realistic outcome is that they slip down into the play-in tournament, which would only drive Giannis further away from wanting to stay on the team long term. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these teams for next season. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.